and it describes the entrance of us believing in alternate worlds and not being stuck in the old structure. There's a whole new world that's entered, and we can feel you're part of it. I'm part of it. Mm-hmm. And so it is an old story that we didn't believe, but secretly we did.
Mm-hmm. The archetypes of the planets give me specific meanings. Their specific geometry to each other give me specific meanings. The positions they fall in the clock face of the birth chart, are they at the beginning, the middle, the end, where are they? That gives me another layer of meaning. So you've got this kind of multi-layered jigsaw building up that gives me just layers and layers and layers and layers of meaning for that person.
That is what we call in Feng Shui the spiritual luck. Is what we call your karma, your purpose in life. And he said some people think that's 100% of the time, but he said it's actually only 33.3% that we need to focus on that. The second part, he said, is like the soul, of course, comes into a human being and is like a human experience, right? That it goes through a whole life. And of course, that soul then works with the mindset, with the behavior, with the actions of the body. So it's like the mind-body-spirit connection.
So when I'm out, there's, like I said, there's beings that present themselves to me, have taken me many places, like the halls of Amenti, the cathedrals, the records, soul records, right, have shown me the very nature of this place from the outside, what the construct looks like. So it's no different there, because when people die and they see these beings, right, relatives or guides, it's the same thing.
And it's a new movement that's going across the whole planet. I mean, Pluto's entering Aquarius, another jargon term, once every 240 years in November 2025. And it describes the entrance of us believing in alternate worlds and not being stuck in the old structure. There's a whole new world that's entered, and we can feel you're part of it. I'm part of it. Mm-hmm. And so it is an old story that we didn't believe, but secretly we did. Mm-hmm. It's a funny game. Like, we all know that dreams are real and that magic is real and that we fall in love and that these magical things happen in our dream states and our visions, and we get intuitions, and there's magic mushrooms and there's magic energies and there's...
But the thing is that what you call magic, and a lot of times it could be science. It literally could be like, if I go to a tribe somewhere and I open up my iPhone and show them a picture of themselves that I just took, they'd be like, oh my, you're a magician. So it is really points of view on what magic is and what magic is. And
completely.
I studying spirituality as long as I have, and continuously having these amazing conversations, has broadened my horizons as far as what I understand to be true or not true. I've seen too much. Within my own personal journey, I've seen too much. And then experiencing through others, I've felt too much, I've seen too much. So I know none of the stuff that I'm talking about and having on the show is BS. And people can sense that when they hear me talking. I'm like, I'm not a charlatan going, the second we're off, like, whoosh, that BS astrology thing, I think we're going to get a lot of clicks out of that. No, you can't fake that. I'm not definitely not good enough of an actor to do that. But I've just seen the magic, and throughout my life, I've seen it to the point where, like, I was about to go bankrupt in my 20s, and because for many other reasons, I went down the dark path of my own stuff that I had to deal with, and I yelled out to the universe, and I said, "All right, God, I'm going to sign these papers to file for bankruptcy unless you get me a job. I will pay this, and I will do what's right, and I will work my ass off, but I need you to help me. If not, I'm going to protect myself and I'm going to sign these papers." And the next day I get a phone call from my first boss saying, "Hey, there's somebody looking for an editor up north." And a year later, I was out of debt because I busted. And then I got a second job, and they're like, "Oh, you want work? We're going to get you work." And I just grinded.
See, it's what I described. Your early life was difficult. Saturn on the sun.
Very.
But then the lessons came in, and then it humbled you. Saturn rules humility. Yes. That's how we get humbled through the most. So for anyone watching this, for people that are in a really stressful moment where life is screaming at them and they're on the wrong street, so to speak, because that wasn't the wrong street.
No, I was on the right street, but it was my street.
That's right.
It was the street I had to
that's
be
very
on.
your style. You don't follow well. I mean, you have a very unique style.
Oh, I do not like
No, because Uranus. It's so funny you said it.
Oh,
It's sitting on your moon. So remember I said Saturn was on your sun once a year? It happens for a few days.
Yeah.
Well, once a month for a few hours, Uranus was standing on the moon. It's so funny. They were holding hands, which Uranus cannot follow. It was founded in the French Revolution, 1780, when we came across from England and everyone said, forget about following the rules. And they threw the tea off. And they said, we're not paying the queen. We're starting a whole new society. That's Uranus. And it's sitting on, you're like, I am not following. I'm so sorry. And that's what you're doing for all of us. You're breaking the mold of the mind, particularly around science. It's in Libra. Like, you're inviting us to consider opening our mind. And I just want to say in our podcast, which I know we've got plenty of time, I don't want to just talk about astrology because I do so much and I am in love with it. But the more interesting topics are how you and I got to the point where we've been so humbled to open up to these masters and include them in our awareness. So
Absolutely.
So that our human experience is not limited to just the being normal.
I agree with you 100%. I will definitely, let's go down that road before, because I don't want to leave astrology just yet,
No,
but we
exactly.
have plenty of time. Trust
That's right.
me.
Thank you.
One thing I'm curious about is, when did astrology start? How far back in our history?
It's 4,000 years old. See, this is
See,
what
this is
what I
amazing.
meant when I said to you, why is everybody reading the magazines? Why did our grandmothers know? Because it's never left our awareness. It was put in place. This is the secret. I'm putting this on camera. It's such a high intelligence and it's so impeccable that I can look at every single person's chart, as can my astrologers, and assess without ever knowing someone, because it's been put in place by a very high intelligence. And so while we can't call it ETs, I don't know what to say because I don't have concrete answers.
The universe.
The
Whatever.
universe,
Yeah,
the
sure.
universe. It's cool. We're going to talk about that. High levels of masters put in place an architecture so that as a therapist, healer, human, I could look into your psyche and have compassion for, oh, Alex, you're so serious sometimes. You get so devoted to what you're doing. And then you go, yeah. And I go, well, that's probably because you promised. You promised this life that you would give us this gift. And then it comforts the person because they're like, I always wondered what I was doing here. I mean, that is essentially the deepest question and wound in the human psyche is from time immemorial, what am I doing here? Who am I?
Yeah.
How
What's
do
the
I
purpose?
fulfill my purpose for those that created me? And who started this movie? Like, how did this even happen? How did they put in place an ancient template that is perfectly designed to answer the question of every single person's chart? And it works every time across 4,000 years. And yet, so many people go, I don't believe in astrology.
Well, a lot of people didn't believe that the Earth rotated around the sun either. So there's that.
That's so true. We are evolving creatures.
We are evolving creatures, and at a certain point, this will be so rudimentary that everyone will be like,
Thank
of
you.
course.
Of
Like,
course.
Well, a lot of these concepts are like, a lot of the things I talk about on the show were taboo. I mean, you were burned at the stake, let's say.
Totally.
For being a psychic, being a channel, talking about this kind of stuff. This is witchcraft. This is the devil's work, obviously.
I know.
But these, I've just seen it. That
The
people
evolution.
The evolution. People are much more awakened. People are more curious, and people are more open to these ideas. Where my parents' generation wasn't, and my grandparents,
Totally.
they did it, but they were quiet in the corner.
Secrets.
Very sweet. Like if you were psychic and you had psychic abilities, it was just like
For the last 2,100 years, it was called the Piscean Age. And in the Piscean Age, Christ arrived. It was
Yeah.
the very entrance. And his message was so beautiful, turn your other cheek, love everyone.
Right.
But it also came with severe religion. Like you have to follow these rules. Same thing with Judaism. You have to stay inside this box. And it went on until the 1960s when the Aquarian Age began. We were like, no, I'm throwing this away. I'm taking these drugs. I'm not getting married. I'm getting, like the whole thing threw itself into a wild, which is where we're at now. We're entering another 2,100 years with Pluto entering Aquarius of a new era. And what does that mean? It means that everything that worked before doesn't work now.
Well, we see it though. We see that happening in the world right now. Things are crumbling around us.
I know.
Institutions.
Look at the world. At the environment, at the money, at the government, at the
religion,
at the education, at the health. I know this is not a bad thing. Announcement. This was predicted. The seers knew this was going to happen. We were going to reach a pitch where we can no longer sustain a society that was based on taking, consuming, and hurting. So the good news is we're changing. The bad news is this is really uncomfortable. I mean, we don't have a mental construct. My new book, Get Ready, is called I Don't Believe in Astrology, because there's so many people that don't believe in it. And that, I know it's funny. And I'm trying to introduce, like, you can consider there's an ancient science that knew this was coming. We knew the transition from one era to another would be arriving, and it would be uncomfortable, really uncomfortable, if you didn't understand, which is why you're here.
So like the Mayan calendar, I remember the 2012 thing.
With the Mayan calendar.
The 2012 thing, that the world's coming to an end in 2012. But as we know, the Mayans were expert astronomers, expert in the stars. So at the end of that calendar, it wasn't the end of the world, it was the end of an age.
Ding, ding, ding.
And then a beginning of a new age. And I don't know about anyone listening, but in 2012 since, things have been a little rockier.
100%.
Been a little bit rockier than they were before. I mean, I've been around the planet for a while now. I remember the 70s, I remember the 80s, I remember the 90s, even the early 2000s. And the world changed. There was obviously some rockiness. The 80s were interesting, to say the least, but nothing
It's so
compared
radical.
to, like, basically from 2012 on. I mean, 2020, this decade it has been the most insane
I know.
decade of my
and
life.
why does it make me smile? It's not nice, but some part of me is so excited about the dismantling and the breakdown and the openness to considering that there's bigger intelligences, welcome to our friends, who are facilitating this change and that nothing's wrong. What a radical new thought process. But it's dependent on how scared we get. And notice the human condition, said the therapist. We only learn when we're really miserable. We only get change when we hit rock bottom. We only really come to our knees when we're going bankrupt and we scream out to God. Why is it we need to have crisis to wake us up?
Well, because there's this zone that is called the meh zone. And that meh zone...
You don't know much about Mr. Saturn.
So the meh zone, I just created that by myself. The meh zone is like, things aren't great, but they're not too bad. I can deal. You need to get to the point where it's unbearable for you to change. And that is just a human condition a lot of times.
That's the first chapter of my book.
It's just
In
a
the
human
missing-
condition.
It's very sad because we're reaching that pitch. And I said this many years ago. 2024 was going to be the last year of going blah, 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 like la, 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 like, oh, climate change. Oh, there's this big political situation. Oh, we have so much diversity, we don't get along. And 2025, when Saturn enters Aries and then going forward, we're going to start seeing the real bottom note. So now we're awakened. But so for those of you watching, here's what you do to prepare. You wake up before the alarm clock. You give yourself, that's what I do, and you do it too. I pray, don't hurt me. Let me learn my lessons gently. But I do it because I'm so committed to this change. That's the first thing that has to happen. Admit that we are in a transition. I mean, it's so loud. I don't know why it's debatable.
I mean, it's not even debatable. I mean, what do you mean? Of course, everything is... I always use the example of, like, the Catholic Church was you couldn't even move it. It was the Rock of Gibraltar. It was nothing. It could do no wrong. And now... the cracks are everywhere. Same thing for the economy. Same thing for the healthcare system. Same thing for the education system. Same thing for our politics. Same thing for our food. Everything.
I know. It's
all the
so
lies and all
amazing.
the stories that all of those industries around the world have been feeding us. We used to be like, duh, 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 duh. And now we're like, no.
And now we're choosing our food and we're choosing our water and we're choosing our relationships and we're choosing if you're awake. So what your whole podcast does, it wakes us up.
I try.
But no, it's working. Like, oh, there's other people to believe in that have alternate worlds. Oh, there's people that can see behind the veil. Oh, there's astrologers that can determine the divine nature, the compassion of the human. Oh, there's ways to operate that are kind. And it's real.
Right, and I love that word kind. Is
So does
something
the Dalai Lama.
It's the kind is the thing that is missing. You know, why can't we be human first? Not color, not sex, not anything else. Human first. Everything else could be falling away, but to be human with each other, to be
Did
kind.
you know that Dalai Lama is a Cancer with Virgo rising?
Stop it.
The same as you, and his whole religion is kindness.
I look forward to having him on the show one day.
And his message is not necessarily with words, because all you have to do is think about him.
Mm-hmm.
He's a meditator, and he's carrying the legacy and the ancient wisdom from the masters, and that's the interface that you're bringing us. That people feel like, as a human, we're so awkward. I wanted to name my new book, You're and I Still Like You, but they wouldn't let me use it. But it's true. Everyone's It's just the nature of the beast. Every
Sure.
single person listening to this has some quirky part of their character that's a little embarrassing. They don't want to tell anyone. And it's endearing when it's seen through the eyes of the soul. Like, you're so cute. I mean, listen, I have quirks. I can't tell you the quirks. When I walked in today, we couldn't even find this place. I'm like, when the human nature dimension kicks in and you're feeling nervous and all that stuff, human as you describe it, and then there's a soul watching us. This is all my life's work. Take a breath, smile, and realize we're so cute. We're so goofy. We're so funny.
It's kind of like the player playing a video game, and then we're the video character, and we're looking at them down there going, oh, look how adorable. Like, oh, just run into that wall. Or, oh, there's all the monsters in the corner. And they're the observer. But we're taking it extremely seriously.
Oh, no.
Because you have to.
Yeah.
We have to
It's
take
so
this
compelling.
seriously.
It's so...
I mean, if we didn't take this seriously, then there's no point in this. You have to take the simulation
Well, that's the
seriously.
operating system. It can change. There's an operating system we're all locked down on, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what this new book is about. That your mind has a real default of design faults, like I can't forgive easily.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know how to
Programming.
I don't know how to end things, and I'm insecure and I don't tell anybody. And I feel like these internal dialogues have captured me based on my chart, like an emotional one for you with Cancer, being Saturn's in Cancer. You're so sensitive, it's slightly embarrassing. Like everything affects you. So that becomes your secret. Everyone's got one. You can look at everyone's chart and I can go, sorry for saying that out loud. But you're a mush. I mean, you're...
Oh, but you could tell that by just watching me and talking to me.
I could tell that, but it really got echoed with 3 planets in Cancer, Jupiter in Pisces. You're a sensitive.
Oh, very.
So, but that's everyone has a little access through their chart of being quirky. I love that word, quirky. And then my job is to create the compassion. Because when we move into this transition, which is about to happen, just take off your seatbelt, we're moving very quickly now from 2026 to 2028. When Saturn enters Aries, the energy starts building and all the outer planets move into fire and air, and it's very explosive. It's not like now. We've been in la-la land. We hear about the climate change. We hear about AI. We hear about all the negativity that's going on in our communities, and we watch it on television as a distant experience. But when you have a hurricane hit your own house,
Oh, yeah.
when you start hearing about your children not wanting to have children, when you start seeing the depression and the addiction that's occurring because the kids don't like it here, that's when it becomes our job to go, let's speak to the unspeakable. Let's talk about the things we don't talk. Why? Because I've learned about my system. I'm strong enough to be a mom or a healer or a helper or a wisdom keeper. And from that place, I can help this because we are going into a transition.
I remember it like it was yesterday, and I spent 7 hours with him, and it just blew my world open. And I haven't stopped studying since then. It just cracked my world open that he could, go back in my life, give me dates of particular experiences, etc. And it was just like magic. And oddly, he disappeared soon after that. I think he was just an earth angel that came to reconnect me to it.
Really, that's fascinating. Well, so during those 7 hours, were you you were a believer in astrology before you did those 7 hours with this guy?
I knew nothing about it, but it's interesting you say believer, because people think you've got to believe that it's some kind of religion or philosophy in that way. It's just a language. It's literally a language. So it's just like learning French or Spanish or whatever, but you'd never say you don't believe in French, do you? You don't believe in that codswallop called Spanish, do you? Because it's literally just a language that you learn with rules like grammar, etc. And it's for me, it's having spoken pretty fluent French. It's much more complicated than learning a language, because with the language, you finally get to the point, as I did with French, thinking, okay, I've pretty much cracked it. I can be colloquial. I can speak with a local. I can talk about anything. I haven't got that clunky thing in my head anymore that's trying, this means that. And so you get to a finite point with a language of saying, right, I can now speak this language. You never get to that point with astrology. I'm still a learner all these years on. I'm still a beginner. It just is infinite. It goes on and on and on, partly because of the discovery of new planets further out in the cosmos. But it's also because we are able to, I think, really dig much deeper into the true meaning of astrology. And so whether you go out or whether you go in, it's never an ending. It's infinite.
Where did astrology come from? What are the origins of astrology?
Well, that's a fascinating question. It is said in recorded history, it is said that it began about 6,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia, which was the birth of civilization, of writing and arithmetic. And that sadly is now modern day Iraq. But that's when people were living very open to the skies. They didn't have computers and televisions and cinema. Their entertainment was watching the moon move around and Venus and Mars. And so they started to tell each other stories about the gods that lived on the planets. And those stories are the myths that are still my bread and butter today. I mean, I find it astonishing that the myths that were invented as stories for entertainment are absolutely what I use in my day-to-day practice. I actually think it is way older than 6,000 years, because Robert Edward Grant is a great friend of yours. If you look at the work he was doing in the pyramids, whether it was zodiacs, if those pyramids were built 13,000 years ago, or maybe even a whole precessional cycle earlier than that, you add another 25,000 years back on that. If that had the language of the zodiac signs written inside the king's chamber, then we're dealing with something really, really ancient as a galactic language. I think it came from the Galactics.
So so for the layman, what is astrology? Because I'll tell you what I think it is, and I'm sure I'm going to be completely off. But it is basically, from my understanding, the movement of the stars, and depending on where the stars or planets align, certain things happen energetically to this planet, just like the moon moving around the earth affects the tides. We have that kind of effect on our energy level, depending on when we were born. There's a certain energy signal. I think so. You see, it's very muddled what I just said. Please fix this for me. I set you up, Pam. I set you up. I wanted to completely look like a buffoon, so you look even better. So please.
Oh, bless you. Bless you. Okay, so what your birth chart is really completely unique. It will never be repeated in history again, which means we're all special. Mm-hmm. And what it is a snapshot of the heavens at the moment of your birth, which is like the Hermetic philosophy. It's an out there because it's a snapshot of the heavens, but it also gives me a very detailed map of your psyche. So it's inner and outer at the same time. So what you're looking at really is what are called the archetypes, the myths around the planets, and their geometry to each other. And so the archetypes of the planets give me specific meanings. Their specific geometry to each other give me specific meanings. The positions they fall in the clock face of the birth chart, are they at the beginning, the middle, the end, that gives me another layer of meaning. So you've got this kind of multi-layered jigsaw building up that gives me just layers and layers and layers and layers of meaning for that person. And so what astrology does is connect us to the cosmos via a language of meaning and sacred geometry, essentially. So it's very deep. And I'm discovering things in my own birth chart all these years on. I think, wow, how didn't I see that? So it is very, very multi-layered. So even, I don't do client work anymore, sadly, I just don't have the time. But when I used to see clients, all I'd know was their name, and they could have called themselves Fred, that didn't matter. But as long as I had the accurate birth data, I could go back in their life, which I always did with a client, and select maybe 20 or 30 specific dates where I could ask a question that had a black and white answer. Did a parent die at that time? Did you emigrate? Was there a sibling born who was very unwell at that time? Did your mother become very ill at that time? So all of those questions kind of have yes or no answers. You couldn't say, well, my father kind of died then, and I kind of emigrated. Do you know what I mean? It's got black and white answers. So that would confirm the birth time for me. And that means if in going back, I could pinpoint exact dates, usually by the month, not necessarily by the day, but by the month, I could therefore reliably move forwards in their life and describe the qualities of experience. I never described the events because the universe is way smarter than we are in co-creating with us, but I could describe particular qualities of events or opportunities, strategic opportunities coming up for them, which then they could optimize, they could maximize. And so, but if, for instance, I was with a client going back in their life and saying, did this happen at this date, this happened, and they'd say all of those things happened, but they happened 6 months earlier than those dates you're giving me. I know the person was born, let's say, about 10 minutes earlier. So I can rectify the time, I can change the clock face on the birth chart, then everything going backwards and forwards works like clockwork. So it's very precise.
How did you know what questions to ask? Where does that information come from?
Okay, so the questions, so they come from the archetypes of the planets, because I don't want to get too lost in the weeds, because I know some of the audience may not be familiar with astrology. But let's say you had a big Pluto transit to the vertical axis in your chart. You've got two axes in your chart, like cross wires. Mm-hmm. And so the vertical axis, one of the meanings is the parental axis, the family axis. So if, for instance, you have a big Pluto transit, and Pluto has a 248-year orbit, so those don't come up very often in your chart, that is one of the classic signatures of the death, because Pluto is to do with death, transformation and rebirth, the death of a parent or grandparent. Very reliable. Transit solar arcs, very reliable. Equally with, if it's, say, a Neptune transit to that vertical axis, that parental axis, I'd say, did a parent or grandparent become extremely frail at that time and just kind of faded away? And you get the answer. So it's it used to, it still blows me away all the time how reliable and accurate it is. And this is literally the first time I've met someone or spoken to them on Zoom, and they might have called themselves Fred, as I say. It is remarkably, remarkably accurate. And so it gives us a stunning sense of validation of our uniqueness in the world, who we are, and who we are meant to become in our Dharma. What is our Dharma? What is our unique soul's purpose in this lifetime? And that is, that's often what people search for all their lives. And it's so clearly marked in the chart in terms of the direction that their soul needs to go in to be fulfilled in this life. It's like a compass needle. And I can say more on that if you'd like me to.
Yes, absolutely. Before we move forward, I want to go back. So if let's say I show up, I'm meeting you for the first time, all right? I don't see a whole lot of books around you. I don't see any charts around you. I do see some beautiful pillows that have some astrology in it. But so if I show up and give you a birthday and I'm talking to you,
and a time.
A time when you were born?
Yeah, time when you were born, and a place, like a town.
A town. Okay. So if I gave you that information, then you would, based on just, because that's a lot of variables between the last 50 or 100 years, a lot of dates and times during that period. How are you going to, is it something that comes instinctually to you? Are you using astrology in a combination of some other skill set or
No.
Explain.
No,
I'm really curious. I just want to know how the process works.
When I was studying a long time ago, we had to calculate the charts manually with logarithmic tables of planetary movements. We weren't allowed to use a calculator. That took hours to do. Now, computers can calculate the actual chart. So all I need is the date, a time, and a place. That's all I need. And as I said, they could make up the name. That's the only three things I need. The computer can calculate the chart in a few minutes. And I asked for various kind of slices of information, if you like, levels of information. I then spend about 5 hours analyzing all of that information. And the real skill with astrology is not that means this. It's the synthesis. It's almost like, when you're learning a language or when you're learning music, it's really clunky when you start. Mm-hmm. But once you can really flow with it, you can start to read it like music, much more intuitively. So even now, if I was doing a special favor for somebody, because as I said, I haven't got time to do client work, it would take me literally 4 to 5 hours before I would have the conversation with the client, and then I'd have a lot of information for them.
Fascinating. So, Pam, when you were studying this, the world we live in now, it's a little bit more open to a lot of the things that we're talking about on this show. Channeling, psychic mediums. It's always been around, but they're a little bit more open to it nowadays than they were before. People are more curious about it. 20 years ago, if you would have told me I was going to have a conversation with an astrologer in England, I would have said, you're absolutely insane. But I'm here now because this is where I am in my journey. When you came out as a professional astrologer, what did your friends and family say around you? Because this is not an easy path to walk when you started.
No. I mean, I think you're spot on, Alex, because like any spiritual path, it's pretty solo. It's pretty solo. I worked in the corporate world for 35 years. So I was pretty senior. I was director in the corporate world. I could not mention this subject because it would wipe out any business credibility I had, because in one sense, it's very interesting. That's why I called my first book, You Don't Really Believe in Astrology, Do You? Because, I'd operate in the corporate world, pretty successfully. And so, but if any of my clients, my big corporate clients, heard that I was also an astrologer, at the end of meetings, they'd kind of take me off to a corner and in a kind of conspiratorial whisper, they'd say, come on now, you can tell me you don't really believe in astrology, do you? Like I'd gone from a competent person to somebody utterly wacko who clearly needed therapy. So that became such an impossible Grand Canyon to navigate. And many of us do this, don't we? We do the no-brainer as our first career, and then we move on and say, no, this is the thing I've really got to do. And I know in previous lifetimes I've absolutely worked as an astrologer. So at that point, I just said, I'm done with the corporate world, and plunged into astrology. And I never made a better decision, because I was meant to do this. I absolutely know I was meant to do this, and I'll do this till the day I pop my clogs, because it is so helpful to people, and particularly the way I'm kind of coming at it right now. I'm really trying to encourage people to go beyond the fatedness of planets do things to you, because there's still quite a bit of fear around astrology. Tell me my fortune because I'm worried about what Pluto's doing to me, or Neptune. And I want to turn that all around and say, come on, guys, this is incredible information to help you live strategically, to help you live a bigger and more magnificent life.
I remember once, it was a very interesting story, but I come in somebody's home and they're like, we're trying to sell this place, it doesn't work. And I'm sitting there in their kitchen and I haven't even visited the rest of the home. And I said, did this home was occupied by a general, like you bought this place? And yeah, we bought it from a widow, from a general. And I said, why? I said, because I see him standing there. And he was giving all kind of information to me. And I said, he's telling me that you have to stay away from the orange couch that is in the living room, because that's his couch. And he said, like, what? You haven't even gone into the living room, right? You just have come into the kitchen. Sure. We have an orange couch that I took over from the widow because I thought it was so cool. But each time I'm sitting there, I feel like I'm getting pinched. Like somebody doesn't like me to sit there. And said, well, he's very upset with you. So,
and is this just a soul that just hasn't transitioned?
It hasn't transitioned, yeah. So it was quite interesting. He gave me a lot of information. And so I said we need to help him go to another level. So I then do work to clear that energy. And it's not something I talk too much about, but it's part of our diamond space clearing techniques that we help people to also go and help these souls that are lost to transition. And the moment we let him go, and the energy starts feeling immediately different.
Of course.
And then she sold the week after, and she tried for 3 years to sell the space.
Yeah. Really? And she was able to sell it right away?
Of course, because he didn't want her to sell because it was his home. So I had to kind of make him become aware that it was not longer his home.
Marie, when you're seeing these, I've had a lot of mediums on the show and things like that. Is it like you see a person? Do you see an apparition? Do you see, like, what do you see?
Well, I actually see a person.
Okay, so it's like
Yeah.
me and you.
Me and you, but they're more transparent.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so I can actually describe them. It's very interesting. Like, and I remember this man was telling me, my name is Spitzbergen, right? And I said to you, is that?
Are you hearing this, or is this going through your
I'm
mind?
hearing it.
It's in your mind.
I hear it.
Oh, your auditory. Like
I uttered.
Okay.
And so he's like, oh, it's not his name. His name was Spitzbergen. I mean, that's close enough, right? So I was like, yeah, I literally hear them like you are talking to me. But it's like not something I focus too much on it, but if it happens,
Right.
And I remember once I had this very interesting story. I come in a celebrity's home, and in that celebrity's home, I'm not going to give the name now, but I'm walking around and I see this, very heavy lady with like a kaftan wearing, and she is swearing and swearing, and I'm like, do you recognize this? And I describe her, and that's what she's saying, and she's upset that you use her bedroom. And this man is like, well, we know we bought this house, and one of the previous owners was Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas.
Yeah.
And she was always known for wearing these long kaftans, right? And she had a really strong mouth. Personality. And I was like, oh, and she's very upset. You're using her bedroom. Right? Wow. So he said, yeah, we've been aware that like we have some visitors sometimes reacting to that. So, I had to talk to her in a very strong way to say, it's time to go. Right?
And she left.
Yeah, she definitely left.
So all this work that you're doing, the energy aspect of it, I get, because I understand the understanding of Tai Chi, Reiki, Qigong. I understand those concepts, but those are very earthbound things. Literally earth, water,
the earth energy.
wind.
Feng Shui is an earth energy.
It's an earth energy, but there seems to be a spiritual component to this. And now you've actually opened the door to literally the spiritual aspect of it. Literally, how
I did not expect talking about.
I didn't expect. I didn't ask you about it. It just naturally the universe came out.
It's here. Yeah.
And I don't want to dive in too deep to that.
Yeah.
I understand that,
Okay.
but not the spirit in the ghost aspect of it or the spirit aspect of it, but more of the spiritual of the soul and of the energy and evolution of our spirit.
Yeah.
How does that incorporate this work? Because it seems like there's a spiritual component.
There is, totally. So when I, for the first time, really studied with my grandmaster in Malaysia, he was telling me that our soul, of course, has a plan, right? When we come, we have a purpose. We have some soul lessons to learn. And he said that is what we call in Feng Shui the spiritual luck. Is what we call your karma, your purpose in life. And he said some people think that's 100% of the time, but he said it's actually only 33.3% that we need to focus on that. The second part, he said, is like the soul, of course, comes into a human being and is like a human experience, right? That it goes through a whole life. And of course, that soul then works with the mindset, with the behavior, with the actions of the body. So it's like the mind-body-spirit connection, right? And we can improve that, of course, with the right actions, the right exercise, the right mindset. He said that part, we call that the human luck, is responsible for 33.3%. But he said what most people don't think about is that the soul also chooses a place to have that human experience. So like I chose to be born in Belgium, right? But so that was my start point of my journey. While now I live in the United States, so my soul made that plan to come here. But also every place where I live, the soul, that space, that environment can stimulate and support that soul to reach enlightenment. Because for me, Feng Shui is a method to help you to reach enlightenment, to create an enlightened home, so that your light of your soul can really expand and grow. And sometimes people live in spaces where it's the opposite, where the light of their soul is dimmed, is literally not able to grow. And so that is, for me, feng shui is a way to create enlightened homes for your soul to really fulfill its lessons, learn its karma, and experience dharma. So that is the last aspect that we call the environmental or the earth luck. It's like when you work on that, it's something my feng shui master told me, and that really stuck to me. He said, like, if your home has a higher vibration, your soul will reach faster enlightenment.
So it's kind of like when you are in a holy site, a sacred site. You walk into a church, let's say, like I walked into St. Peter's Basilica, and you know, regardless of the religious aspect of it, the energy of the space is very powerful. When you go to Chichen Itza, the power of there, you go to the Great Pyramids, the power of those spaces energetically are very high. People say that they meditate inside the King's Chamber, and they go to places that you couldn't because of the energy of the space.
Correct.
So what you're saying is that if you can create a more enlightened, sacred space in your living, then you're not being held back by negative energies or energies that are not helping you up. You're basically, I love what you said, lifting the frequency of the space, which just makes things a lot easier. You're lifting off weight.
Correct. And so it's very beautiful what you shared about the sacred sites. So if you go to the sacred sites, you know, the shamans of these countries at that time, whatever you would call them, they would always look to places where there are crossing of ley lines. So St. Peter's Basilicum, if you go to the pyramids, they would always be placed in what we call positive vortexes. So it's actually where ley lines, and there's like meridians of the earth, where the energy flows easily, what we have on our own body, by the way.
So that's like Chinese acupuncture.
Yeah, Chinese acupuncture, we have meridians. And so if that meridian is not flowing easily, then it's blocked, and that's where you can start having pain. So what you do with acupuncture, you put a needle on it and you release the energy, or acupressure, and the energy starts flowing again. So, but what if you know that there are sacred sites that in the ancient times they would put temples, later on cathedrals, even, for example, the Washington Monument, for example, is placed on a positive vortex, right? The Capitol Hill in America is placed on a positive vortex. So in the ancient traditions, the Masons, and later on probably the Freemasons, knew that kind of information, and they would build places on top of it. So because when you're there and you would be in such a positive vortex, you would make different decisions. So literally what you have when you're in such a place is that your brain waves will go easier into alpha, theta, and delta state. So if you are in a home and your home has not such a positive energy, even if it's not on ley lines, you can actually, through colors, through the way you position yourself and so on, make sure that your brain waves will go into alpha frequency. So when you go into alpha, right away, you have a different way of living. Because when you're in alpha, you're more optimistic, positive, you're more solution-driven, you have an open view, an open mind, While if you have a home that is not uplifting yourself, you will have what they call a beta home. And in a beta home, literally, you have a harder time to get out of debt. You will have a harder time to have harmony. You'll be living more in conflict. You're more anxious because you're connecting more with your past experiences, and you're not focusing so to the future. So in the sacred sites, what they did is that they made sure that the palaces where the king or the emperor would sit, if that was in China or it's in Versailles or Buckingham Palace, they were all built on these ley lines, and where the king or the queen or the emperor would sit, they would sit on the strongest place because he or she had to lead the people. So if they don't make the best decisions with the best vision for the future, that would create problems for the rest of the people. But of course, it's not that we can all build our homes on ley lines, right? If you have that, like I was just yesterday with a very wealthy man in Detroit, of course, by coincidence, like his home is built on such a crossing of ley lines. And so he chose that home because he probably said, I fell in love with this home. Because it's such a high vibration. Since he moved in there, he 10 doubled his income, right? So It's actually a place of strength. Yeah. Now we cannot all create that, but we can come very close to it by seeing your home as a body and making sure there is nothing blocking the movement, the flow of the home.
There are homes and spaces that I've walked into that are, you just go, ugh.
Yeah, right.
You just feel it. There's people too. I mean, there's people's
Totally,
energy that you run into. You just go,
Yeah.
there's something. I need to take a shower.
I'm not talking to them.
I need to take a shower.
I need to take a shower.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, you live in Los Angeles now, so you know the feeling.
Yeah. Well, I live in a very beautiful area. I live in Bel Air, so
It's a beautiful area.
beautiful
yes,
area. I'm fine.
LA is LA, but
Right,
Bel Air
yeah.
is stunning, a stunning place. But you were saying that this has been around for about 4,000 years.
Yeah.
Do you know the origin of it? Like, is there such a thing? Is there some sort of record that says Bob started this? Bob Lee, because it was in China.
It would not be Bob Lee, I'm sure. Well, it's very interesting because there are legends, of course, right? That people say that a certain tortoise came out of the river and talked and shared information to the emperor.
And these are tortoises.
Tortoises.
In the myth,
right.
okay.
And so, or that a dragon came and talked to the emperor. There's always, they talk by, interesting enough, to the emperor, right? So they don't talk to a normal person. But if you look back at the history of feng shui, is that then they had scholars, they had people, wise men, elders, and whatever the elder found was always dedicated then to the emperor. So it was not the emperor himself, right, that found the information. But I would say, no, there's not like a one point. But later on in the last 2,000 years, there are some formulas that have been dedicated that they knew, like, for example, Lao Tse or Confucius contributed to feng shui.
Okay.
And so there are some that, we know, we don't know if it's exactly them. I mean, there's no records of it, but that they contributed in some way. Yeah.
So what part does the yin and yang play with balancing the energy of your home or work?
So when you look at yin yang, yin is literally means the female energy and yang means the male energy. So we have that in ourselves. You can think about everything has two polarities, positive, negative, winter, summer, or left and right brain, or left and right hand, right? So we actually are created in polarity. But the whole point is that we're trying to find a balance between these two. So the yin yang, it's very interesting when you look at the yin yang, there is, in the white part is a little black dot, and in the black part is a little white dot, right? So it says that even if you think you're completely male, there's always a spot of female energy in you.
Yes.
And if you think you're completely female, there's a little spot still from the male energy in you. So that's actually what I think is one of the most beautiful things, showing there's an ongoing change happening. So for me, yin yang is a balance, but it also tells you, because if it's a circle, that is, if you turn it around, there's an ongoing, like everything is stagnant and moves again. Everything is female and becomes male again. If summer is past, winter will come, right? So it's all about the law that we know is always existing, and everything is the law of change. Yeah, right? So nothing is stagnant. Right. But for example, if your home is stagnant because you have created clutter and chaos around it, then your mind and your body and your life will become stagnant. So for you to create a change, and I love the word change because it has two words in it. It has the word chi in it and the word angle. Yeah. So it's like if you change your angle, if you look differently, like if I look this way or I look this way, I have a different energy. Yeah. So there's a different energy in myself, right? A different energy in the environment. So change is literally saying if you change your angle, you will have different energy, right? So if you focus on something positive, that's what the law of attraction talks about, right? Then, you will have more of the positive energy, right? If you look at something negative and you talk about fear and sadness and your anger, you will have more of that attracting in your life. So, but what if you can create a balance between everything? Ultimately, we want a home to be balanced, so that harmony is the strongest aspect. So when people come in a space where they're like, oh, I love it here, I could stay here, that means the house is yin-yang.
It's balanced.
It's balanced. Yeah.
There's a story that you said, I forgot where it was, but you said a story of a client of yours that you walked into, and he's like, I can't find love. I can't find love anywhere. It just keeps avoiding me. And you walked in and you look, and all he had was paintings of women with her back to him,
Yes.
and kind of like giving her back that. And I know that image because
Yeah.
that's those are very famous paintings.
Yeah.
And you just said, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Get rid of this. Tell that story together.
Well, it was actually a story from The Secret.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, that was where it was?
Yeah,
Oh,
that was
okay.
where it
That's right.
was. Yeah.
That's where I remember. That's right.
Yeah.
You were in The Secret. I forgot
Yeah,
about
it was
that.
in The Secret.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was this man, and a good-looking guy. I mean, to be honest, if I would not have been married, I would have been interested in the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He was so good-looking. He was working, a film producer. And I mean, he's surrounded with the most beautiful women,
Yeah.
right? And he's like, I can't find love. And they even set me up with a blind date today. It was that bad. And he said, I want you to look what is going on. And I was like, I have to tell you, everything around you is affecting you subconsciously. That's why in my new book, I talk about your home as a vision board. Yeah. So everything gives a message to your subconscious mind. So when I looked around, I saw that in every room that he was in, his office, he had an atelier because he was also a painter, family room, living room, bedroom. He had an image of a woman that he painted himself, by the way, like literally looking away. And she had like this cloth to kind of cover her breasts, you know. And she was like, I'm not interested, right? But on top of it, and that's something I didn't mention in the Secret, based on his birthday, he actually placed it each time coincidentally in his relationship direction. So when you have done based on your birthday, you have a relationship energy. Like for him, that was northwest. When you have done this image of a single person in that exact place of wind, because it's a wind direction, your compass direction, it actually will activate it even stronger. So I said to him, look, is that what you want? I mean, it could be, right? And he said, no, I said, actually, I'm on a dry spell. I really want a lot of women. Like I said, okay, well, paint it, right? So draw the painting and see yourself with different women. So he started painting it, put it in the directions. So then 6 months later, I meet him up in Paris. And I said, how's it going? He said, I have 3 dates a week. Women are like all drawn to me. They ask me out. I'm like, wow, nice difference. And I said, is that what you still want? And he said, no, I want really marriage and kids. And I said, well, paint it, right? So change it. Now, not everybody can paint it like him,
Sure.
right?
But you can buy something.
Yeah, you can find something, a statue or an image that kind of represents that.
Once you do an out-of-body state, it is not an astral projection or a lucid dream, right? Once you come out of your body, right, it is more physical than the physical body that you have right now. Your soul is physical. It has what you would call density, in terms of feeling things, touching things. You're not just a light orb spinning in space. So once you could learn how to control the shutdown of the body, you lower the magnetic field of the physical body, which keeps the soul within the body, right? When that magnetic field is lowered to a sense, you exit. And once you stand, right, you are actually standing in your soul, and your soul is physical. It's literally no different from a near-death experience, because that what you access once you're out of the body is no different from that what you access when you die. You access the records, you access relatives, you access thought forms, time, the events within this realm. You access the very nature of reality in terms of the 12 realms within this construct. I've been shown many different constructs on the other side look like realms stacked on God's shelves. Right. So you access all these things, and all these things come within you, and you start pinpointing things and getting you could say an understanding again, or memory, because it's really the memory, right? Coming back within you. Right. And you start applying things in your physical life and walking the path of accordance of how you would act on the other side, which is in integrity and unconditional love.
Beautiful.
So I also want to say this as well, right? The reason why I say it's not astral projection or lucid dreaming, right? Because when you come out, you are 100% conscious, right? The consciousness that I'm speaking to you right now on this interview, right, is no different from when I come out, or when you come out of your body. You're 100% conscious. But when you're dreaming, just to get like a percentage, right? When you're dreaming, let's just say 25% of your consciousness is there. This is why things fade in and out. You're not fully there. lucid astral, you're maybe about 50 to, I don't know, 70% there, just throwing out numbers to give a illustration and stuff. So, but when you are dead or controlled near death out of body state, you're 100% conscious, 100% aware. So that's
So
sort of the
wait,
difference of what you, yep.
so you said that an out-of-body experience is a controlled near-death experience. So I've spoken
Yes.
to over 100 near-death experiencers at this point. Near-death experiences seem to be guided, meaning that you're being guided as a soul. A lot of times they don't know what's going on. They don't even know that they've passed on until they're like kind of either a spirit guide or Jesus or Buddha or someone shows up and kind of walks them either through a life review or council of elders or meets their relatives, things like that. How is that different than the controlled out of body experience that you're talking about?
Well, you do meet beings, yeah. So I'm in contact with beings there all the time. Once I come out of my body, reoccurring beings come to me and show me things. So it's no different there of beings and like what people call guides that you could access, right? So when I'm out, there's, like I said, there's beings that present themselves to me, have taken me many places, like the halls of Amenti, the cathedrals, the records, soul records, right, have shown me the very nature of this place from the outside, what the construct looks like. So it's no different there, because when people die and they see these beings, right, relatives or guides, it's the same thing, right?
So when did you have, I mean, I'm assuming you didn't come out of the womb having an out-of-body experience. So when was the first time that you actually had your first out-of-body experience? I'm assuming you were looking for it. You were trying to achieve that state and it just didn't happen to you. So how did you do it? And what did it feel like the very, very first time?
Okay, so when I was a child, right, I was entering sleep paralysis, coming out of my body, not realizing that I was coming out of my body, sometimes accessing certain things within the physical body, bringing it in, you could say here, right?
Mhm.
So I didn't understand what was happening. And because when you're a kid, due to all of the fear things that happen, right, I shut it down as a kid due to fear, right?
Mhm.
Fast forward, progressing into around 16 years old is when they started to happen all over again. I popped out, was shown by a being. Her name was Celeste, which showed me, you could say, all things. I didn't know how to interpret it back then until, the hundreds of thousands of out-of-body experiences that I've had from present date. 2014, when I was in Morocco, is when they started to happen uncontrollably. And they happened to me so much where I begged them to stop at a certain point, because once you come out of your body too frequently, right, there's a frying out effect of the central nervous system. It's no different from a computer, right? When a computer has, let's just say, a terabyte of memory, right? When you're accessing information, let's say if it's 3 terabytes, when you try to download that into the physical vessel, the computer, there could be a frying out effect. Things slow down, bog down. So that was happening to me. And I begged it to stop in Morocco. Didn't stop, only temporarily. And then I just learned how to, over the years, control this into a state where every single night, if I choose to, I can shut down the body, leave it, and access the information that I want to access.
So Darius, let me ask you this, man. Why you almost seem prodigy-esque when it comes to out-of-body experiences, like you were kind of put on this earth to do what you're doing. Why do you think you've chosen in your soul contract or in your soul blueprint to experience this, and this gift has been given to you at this high level? Like, we all play basketball, but we all can't be Michael Jordan and Kobe. So there's a difference. So I'm looking upon you as the Kobe or Michael Jordan of out-of-body experiences. Why has that been gifted to you, and why is this information so important for us to be hearing at this point in human existence?
Okay, so I understand where you're going with that, right? In the physical body sense, I could be Kobe Bryant or whatever, right?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
as the soul, right? Your soul has all the capabilities as my
Mhm.
soul, right?
Mhm.
And there's no different at all between
Right.
the abilities and things that we could do and access, right? Now, this out of body state was a very natural thing, especially you go back into the halls of Amenti, accessing the dimensional spaces within this realm and traversing you could say, creation of all things. It's a very natural thing. It's as natural, or was as natural as breathing back then, right? But due to all of the things that have been taking place here, you could say, modification of the DNA, the dumbing down of consciousness, right? Trying to disconnect, you could say, your soul from the physical body, your spirit, like your essence, like truly bringing that in. That's why this is so difficult for people, right? But it's a very trainable thing to reactivate it again, because it's just like a atrophied muscle, right? Because when things, you're not working on things, it just takes a little bit of time to reactivate that again, and then you're up and running, right? So it's not, you don't need to, this isn't something that you need to sit in a, like, for many years to accomplish, right? That's not true at all, right? That's what they would want you to believe, to make you believe that this is something so hard to achieve that you don't even try, right? Because it's very accessible. If you're going to sleep every single night, right, it's just learning how to control certain sleep cycles with shutting down the body, staying consciously aware, and you're out every single time. So yeah.
So why did you choose to have this? What part of this is in your spirit or your soul's evolution to go through this lifetime doing this work?
Okay. I don't really, I know that there's been certain things that are pre-planned for souls, right?
Sure.
Certain event markers, right? Now, these event markers are, you could say, major things that what you said, pre-planned, right? Now, the only thing that what was explained to me is about the great work, which is waking people up to the other side, because when they wake up to that, they wake up to everything. So you could say a part of what I'm doing here is just doing that, right? And that was actually explained to me by my uncle, but I don't know specifically why, other than waking people up to the other side, because that just, it has a catalyst effect of knocking down all of deceptions and getting people direct access to that which they are, the eternal aspect of themselves, right? So yeah,
That makes,
I hope that answers
it does answer your question. It's similar to what I am doing in that way. I'm trying to awaken people with these conversations and give people access in a large way to these conversations, not only in English, but now hopefully in multiple languages around the world. So it's really to expand these ideas as well. So, all right. So I feel you, brother. I feel you at that level, that we're both here doing similar things, but in different ways. But it's very similar to, like, there's so many different.
Well, take it, sorry to cut you off, but take it like this. It's like everybody's acting as a tuning fork, right? So based off the certain level of consciousness of individuals, you're going to act as a certain tuner for a certain level of consciousness. Same with me. Now, I'm not necessarily going to speak to a level of consciousness, let's just say, that's way over here, that's just waking up to the very basic aspects of consciousness or the soul, right? That people would be better off going to just the right person at the stage that they're at in the path, and then it sort of just progress, because we are all destined to become the greatest versions of ourselves, right? So that's just that's a preset event, that each soul is destined to become the greatest version of themselves. So in the process of getting there, everybody will get there. Everybody wakes up to all things again.
Right. It's like you don't start boxing and then your first fight be against Mike Tyson in his prime. Like, that's not a thing you should do. You need to work your way up until you get to a place where your skill set is at a place where maybe Mike Tyson can teach you a few things, but you don't just start learning from a master. I'm using boxing as an analogy, but a violent analogy, but an analogy nevertheless. But you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you were on the other side, you said you've met guides. Have you met your spirit guide specifically?
Yeah, so I met many of them. One of them's called Celeste. Also, I've met my uncle many times. He's taken me to the halls of Amente. There's a few other ones that I don't necessarily that want to share their names specifically, but yeah, one of them has taken me to the cathedrals, which was the heavenly realms. Heaven is actually here, so within this construct, right? But yeah, so I've guides that I've been in contact with, that my first time, you could say my second time here, coming out, then seeing them again, didn't remember them. And I was just like, the third time coming, I was like, oh, I remember who you are. And then, because there's a history, right? So this is where you get soul families, or, stuff like that. Yeah.
So let's get into the construct. What is, from your opinion, this thing called you call in the construct, because there is something called simulation theory that quantum physics has put out and proven actually now that there is chances are that we're in some sort of matrix-esque construct. What is your understanding of that?
The construct is what we're in right now, right? So you could say that's the container, contains everything. It's actually a toroidal field as well. This is where you get many different realms stacked upon realms, all coexisting within here, right? This particular construct has a total of 12 realms, right? So 12 total within here. This is where we have the earthly realms. Realm 1, which is the realm that we're in within this construct, is the earthly realms, right? And there are other land masses still here that have not, you could say, has not been presented to us through the official model that we're given, right? So there are
you mean on Earth?
poles. Yeah,
on Earth. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure there's Antarctica alone.
yeah. This is where all of the races are. You could say ET races exist, right? Even the, you could say a lot of the bodies, the original giant bodies, angel bodies, are in stasis in Antarctica, is what I saw out of my body. Now, when you go through the many different realms, right, they have different names. These realms have different templates, right? So one of them I'll share here is realm 5, which is the heavenly realms. Heaven is within the construct that we are within. It's not actually on the other side. It's within here. It's a certain template within I'll just call it the
frequency.
Yeah, well, I'll just call this construct the game of duality, right? Let's just call it that. That's the thing. I usually do have images, which I don't know if I could share at all. Or,
yeah. But we'll put it after. Sure.
Yeah. But realm 5 is heaven. So this is where you get the realms of heaven, right? So there's different layers within heaven that you get access, right? The records, the cathedrals, right? Some of these places are very pleasurable as well that you can access. When you go up to realm 7, this is where people call the angelics, right? The angels, right? This is where the angels exist within this construct, realm 7, right? Now, as you go up even more, you access realm 9, which is the realm of, you could say, the Rainbow Bridge, gods, or another way to call it is what they call Asgard, right? Realm of gods within this construct, right? Realm 12, right, etc. Like there's different templates and different things that you can access outside of the body that are all here, right? And it's just like basically tuning. It's like a radio frequency, right? So as you start to tune the radio frequency, you'll access different stations. Same thing once you're out of your body. Once you start tuning the soul to different frequencies, you access different realms within this construct. And you access these different realms as well, how I've been showing. There's 2 ways. One within the halls of Amenti, and also through the core of this realm, right? Which they call the core, the Stargate, which the Stargates give you access to all of the realms within this construct. The 12th realm exits you out of the construct completely, where you could actually step out from the outside, view it from the outside, see it from, you could say, God's point of view.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.